Hello friends and welcome back to Cocktails with Kurt. This is episode 2 in our classic cocktail series. Today we're making Manhattans. Kurt, what goes into a Manhattan?
Manhattan is made up of whiskey, sweet vermouth, and aromatic bitters. Originally, when the cocktail was created in the early 1800s, it was rye whiskey. For a while, rye fell out of favor in the US, so it became harder to find, during which time it was predominantly made with bourbon. Thankfully, nowadays, rye is making a comeback, and so we make it with rye.
So you said sweet vermouth. That's not the kind of vermouth we used for a martini.
Correct. Martini uses dry vermouth as opposed to sweet.
And I think you said aromatic bitters. Is that Angostura?
That is the predominant brand. There are a lot of manufacturers who make aromatic bitters, but Angostura is the most popular, and that's what we use.
And that's the one with the ill-fitting label, right?
It is the one with the ill-fitting label. The story behind that is when they tried to do their first sales and bottling, the printer came back and sent them the wrong sized label. They couldn't afford to have a second run made, so they just slapped on the wrong size label, and they basically trademarked that afterwards, and that's how it goes.
All right, so whiskey, preferably bourbon or rye, and the aristocratic lounge's preferred ryes or bourbons for this purpose are what?
Our preferred rye is Rittenhouse. That's what I would use for the well drink. You can make, just like with the martini, the ingredients fit to what your taste is. I like Rittenhouse. For one, it's inexpensive, but it's also very tasty. You can also make, Bullet makes a very nice rye. Catoctin Creek, a local Virginia distillery, also makes an excellent rye. Knob Creek as well has an excellent rye.
So last time you told us that your preferred dry vermouth was Dolin and a vermouth made by Sweetgrass Distillery. What about for sweet vermouth?
Dolin makes an excellent sweet vermouth as well, and I would use that if that's what's available to me. But by preference, we use Cocchi sweet vermouth.
All right, so if all of the components are alcohol or alcohol-based, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this is a stirred cocktail.
It is indeed a stirred cocktail. Of course, again, as I've said before, this is by preference, so you can make it any way you want. I'm going to make it stirred.
Okay, so what are the proportions?
The proportions are pretty simple and they're pretty consistent. 2 ounces of rye to 1 ounce of vermouth and 3 dashes of bitters. So we've got, again, I'm going to make 2 cocktails. So we're going to do 6 dashes of bitters. And that's 6 dashes.
All right, so while you're doing this, let me ask you a quick question. We were talking about the whiskey, and you kind of said anything goes. I know that there are certain members of this household who are particular fans of Scotch. Can you make a Manhattan with Scotch?
Sort of, but if you make a Manhattan with Scotch, it becomes a Rob Roy.
I see. So kind of like how a cocktail onion transforms a martini into a Gibson, using Scotch for the whiskey in a Manhattan will transform it into a Rob Roy.
Exactly.
As if by magic.
As if by magic. So we're, again, using the same 1 to 2 ounce jigger that I used for the last one. So there's 4 ounces of rye and 2 ounces of vermouth. bunch of ice. Again, we stir it, trying to make sure that it gets cold, but we want it to not get cloudy. So we don't agitate it much, or we try not to agitate it much.
So let's talk about a subject that we didn't address in our first episode. Let's talk about glassware for cocktails.
Okay. All right, so glassware for cocktails. Everyone is familiar with the traditional cocktail glass, the conical beast that martinis and cosmopolitans, etc., is served in. I don't like them. They look cool, no question about that, but they're really messy. It's really, really easy to spill what's in a martini glass or in a cocktail glass.
And it's easier to spill the second martini than the first, I imagine.
Yes, indeed. So what we use are coupes. Coupe is basically a champagne saucer, and right now I've got ice and water in it to chill it, but you got a lot more play with the thing before the thing is going to spill. So in addition to the aesthetic of the coupe, I prefer the practicality of it, that you don't spill from it as easily. And the component that I forgot to mention was the garnish. The garnish is a cocktail cherry. And
A cocktail cherry, are you talking about those neon red orbs that are sticky sweet?
They certainly can be. I don't particularly care for them. What I use are Luxardo cherries, maraschino cherries. They are the best that I've found so far, and we've tried a few brands. We did make bourbon cherries once, and those were pretty good.
Ah, yes, we picked our own cherries. It was important to use the tart cherries in that case and not the
Correct.
sweet cherries.
Correct. So, I need to get more cherries. There aren't enough in this jar. There we go.
All right,
And that
looks good. Getting thirsty.
is that.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you next time, everyone.
See you next time.